Welcome. You are watching Flat Science, where we provide an analysis of commercial aviation flight maps. Every time you gaze at a flight tracker or look up at the white trails etched across a clear blue sky, you are looking at a puzzle. We have been taught to look at these lines as simple, efficient paths, the logical result of moving from one point to another. But for some, there is a quiet, nagging tension when the geometry doesn't seem to resolve. When the routes on the screen seem to bend, warp, or deviate in ways that defy the intuitive logic of a globe, a question begins to stir in the back of the mind. It is a question of why the shortest distance often looks like a detour, and why the maps we rely on to navigate our world seem to hide the very truth they are meant to reveal. To all the flat Earth believers out there, before we begin, please write in the comments what convinces you of your views. How did you come to this conclusion? And how do other people view you? Believe me, everyone will be interested to hear it. You are not alone. Most people look at a flight path and see a solved equation, accepting the curvature as a given. But if you are someone who looks closer, if you have noticed the strange sweeping arcs of the southern routes or the curious absence of certain direct passages, then you know that the math doesn't always match the visual. This isn't a mere curiosity for the mathematically minded. It is a fundamental inquiry into how we perceive our place in space. We are often told that these paths are the most efficient, yet they often trace paths that seem to wander through empty expanses, leaving us to wonder what is actually happening beneath the clouds and above the poles. This exploration is not intended for everyone. It is not for those who find comfort in the standard models, or those who believe that if a map is printed, it must be a perfect reflection of reality. It is for the observer who feels a subtle friction between what they are told and what they see. It is for the person who understands that the truth often resides in the gaps between the lines. If you are someone who has always felt that the geometry of our world is more complex, or perhaps more different than the textbooks suggest, then this is for you. We are not here to simply validate what you already know, but to trace the lines of a different reality, to look past the convenience of the projection and find the truth hidden in the flight paths. Hit that like button if you are seeking more mindfulness before we begin. Tell me in the comments why this matters to you. Analysis of commercial aviation flight maps. The great circle lie we all accepted. If you were to take a ruler and a compass to a standard Mercator projection, you would be taught that the shortest distance between 2 points is a curved arc, the so-called Great Circle. We are told that planes must follow these massive sweeping curves to save fuel. And when we look at a flight tracker, we see these arcs stretching across the globe like stretched rubber bands. It is presented as an elegant mathematical necessity, a beautiful truth of spherical geometry. But if we step back from the chalkboard and look at the actual reality of the cockpit and the clouds, we must ask, is this a physical necessity, or is it a clever geometric sleight of hand designed to make the map fit the lie? When we analyze commercial aviation flight maps, we see the same thing: repeated routes that seem to deviate wildly from the straight path. We are told that these paths are the most efficient routes on a globe. Yet when we observe the flight paths in the southern hemisphere, the vast, empty expanses of the Pacific and the Indian Oceans, the geometry begins to unravel. If the Earth were a spinning ball, the mathematics of the Great Circle would dictate certain flight times and distances. Yet, We often see flight paths that seem to skirt around the edges of our world, or routes that make no sense unless the Earth is actually a vast, stationary plane. Why is it that the most efficient paths often seem to avoid the vastness of the southern latitudes, instead hugging the northern landmasses? The Great Circle is the perfect modern myth because it provides a mathematical excuse for why the maps don't match our eyes. It is a way to tell a traveler, don't worry that the plane isn't flying in a straight line. The curve is just the geometry of the sphere working its magic. But let us look closer. When we look at the flight paths of the southern hemisphere, we see the missing link. In a spherical model, a flight from Australia to South America should be a much more direct, shorter journey. Yet, the reality of commercial aviation often forces passengers through northern hubs, through the northern hemisphere, as if the southern routes are too vast to exist. We are conditioned to accept these deviations as efficiency, but are they not actually the shortest paths on a flat plane? The truth is that the Great Circle is a mathematical veil. It allows the cartographers to take a flat surface and stretch it until the truth becomes unrecognizable. It is an ingenious tool used to reconcile the discrepancy between a flat reality and a spherical theory. We have been taught to look at a flat map and see a distorted sphere, rather than looking at the map and realizing it is actually a more accurate representation of the world we live in. We have accepted the curve as a fact because we have been taught to distrust our own senses. We are told our eyes deceive us, but in the realm of aviation, the flight paths tell a story that the textbooks are too afraid to print. They are not just traveling. They are navigating a world that doesn't match the globe they were sold. Why do flight paths look so broken? If you gaze upon a standard flight tracker or a global aviation map, your eyes are immediately met with a perplexing sight. You see these jagged, erratic lines, arcs that seem to veer wildly off course, only to snap back toward their destination. To the modern student, taught from infancy that we live on a spinning, seamless sphere, these broken paths are explained away as the clever mathematics of great circles or the shifting whims of jet streams. They tell you that the shortest distance between 2 points is a curve that looks non-salient on a flat map. But let us pause. Let us look closer at the geometry of our world and ask, if the Earth were truly a globe, why do these flight paths so often mimic the paths of a traveler moving across a flat plane? Why do they look so fractured? The mainstream explanation is that these paths are the most efficient routes on a sphere. Yet when we lay them out on the maps we use to navigate our lives, they appear as if they are following the edges of a disk, or perhaps tracing the boundaries of a vast, stationary plane. Consider the flight from southern continents, the transit from South America to Australia, or from South Africa to Australia. On a globe, these paths should traverse the vast emptiness of the southern oceans, cutting a direct, lonely line. Yet, in practice, we see a curious tendency for these routes to veer north, often making logical stops or tracing paths that seem to respect a central, stationary north. If the Earth were a spinning ball with a massive, hollow-centered centrifugal force, would the flight paths not be more uniform? Instead, we see paths that look like they are being constrained by the very geometry of the map itself. The truth is that these paths aren't broken because of mathematical complexity. They look broken because we are trying to project a flat reality onto a spherical lie. When we look at a flight path that curves toward the pole, we are witnessing the natural movement of a traveler, crossing a flat expanse. The Great Circle is a clever mathematical veil used to mask the reality that we live on a fixed, stable foundation. Theists and scientists alike must reckon with the fact that these routes often follow the most efficient paths of a flat Earth, yet are labeled as spherical to maintain the illusion of the globe. We are taught to believe that the most direct path is a curve, but in the physical world, a straight line is the simplest truth. Who benefits from this confusion? The architects of our globalist education want us to believe the world is a complex, shifting ball, so that we never question the stability of the ground beneath our feet. They want us to believe that the broken paths are necessary, making us dependent on complex calculus to prove what our eyes can see. But if we look at the flight paths as they truly are, as paths across a stationary, created plane, the geometry suddenly makes perfect sense. They are not broken. They are simply being viewed through the lens of a distorted perspective. We are taught to navigate a sphere, yet we fly as if the world is a vast, bounded plane, moving from one corner of the creation to another. To understand the flight paths, we must first understand the world they traverse, mapping the truth of the southern hemisphere. Now, let us cast our eyes toward the great southern reaches of our world, for it is here, in the vast expanse of the southern oceans, that the maps provided to us by modern institutions begin to fray at the edges. When we analyze commercial aviation flight maps, we see a seamless, beautiful globe. But when we look at the actual flight paths, the real-world logistics of moving passengers from one point to another, we encounter a profound mystery. If the Earth were a spinning ball of massive proportions, the southern hemisphere would be an impossibly vast ring of water encircling the land masses. Yet, when we examine the fuel-to-distance ratios and the flight times of transoceanic routes, a different story begins to emerge. Consider the great southern crossings. If you were to fly from Australia to South America, or from Chile to South Africa, the distances on a globe would necessitate an enormous, grueling journey over an endless expanse of sea. Yet, seasoned travelers often find that these routes, while long, defy the mathematical expectations of a spherical geometry. Why do we see such a reliance on great circle routes that seem to make perfect sense on a flat azimuthal projection, but become geometrically strained on a globe? Why are there so few direct southern routes that match the supposed circumference of a globe? The truth is, the maps we use to navigate are often designed to hide the very reality they claim to represent. They are mathematically elegant, yes, but they are geographically deceptive. In the modern era, we are told that these flight paths are the result of pure efficiency. But we must ask who benefits from us accepting these complex, curved path models. We are taught to trust the computer-generated lines on a pilot's screen. Yet those very lines are often the result of a projection, a mathematical correction, to make a flat reality fit a spherical mold. This is the great deception of modern cartography. It is not merely a matter of paper and ink. It is a matter of our perception of the world God laid out before us. We are taught to look at the curved path as the truth, when it is often the most efficient way to navigate a flat plane. The ancients understood the world through their senses, and the wisdom handed down through generations. They knew the earth was a stable, fixed foundation. Today, we are told that our senses are lying to us, and that we must trust the complex, often counterintuitive models of theists of science. We are conditioned to believe that the shortest distance between 2 points is a curve. Yet in a world of gravity-defying nonsense, we find that the geometry of the southern routes is the most telling piece to the puzzle. If the southern hemisphere were truly as vast as the globe model suggests, the economics of aviation would be vastly different. The flight time to distance ratio is the silent witness to the truth. When we look at the empty spaces of the map, where the sea meets the southern rim, we see the perfect architecture of a world designed for stability. The political and economic powers love the globe model because it makes the world seem vast and the oceans an insurmountable barrier, making us dependent on the technology that validates the globe. But as we analyze these flight paths, we realize we are not just flying through the air. We are navigating a world where the truth is often hidden in plain sight. We must stop settling for the convenience of a false model and start looking at the physical reality of the journeys we take. The truth of the southern routes is not found in a textbook, but in the very fuel that carries us across the truth of the earth. How flight paths reveal the true layout. Now, let us turn our gaze to the very instruments of our movement, the flight paths themselves. If we look at a standard globe, we are taught to expect certain paths. Yet when we examine the actual trajectories of commercial aviation, a profound mystery begins to unravel. We are told that these great silver birds follow great circle routes to save fuel, supposedly because the curvature of a sphere makes these paths the shortest distance between 2 points. But if we lay these routes out on a flat plane, a map that reflects the actual geometry of our stationary, bounded world, the curved paths suddenly become perfectly straight lines. Why is it that the mathematics of the sphere requires us to fly in arcs, yet the reality of the plane allows us to fly in straight lines? Consider the geometry of a flight from Buenos Aires to Sydney, or from Los Angeles to Tokyo. In the spherical model, these paths often look like long, sweeping curves that hug the poles. Yet, when you plot these exact coordinates on a flat, azimuthal projection, they align with the natural, logical paths of a world that is not a spinning ball, but a stable plane. The flight paths aren't correcting for a curve. They are simply traversing the true layout of the Earth. We are being taught to interpret the results of our journeys as evidence for a globe, when in reality, the flight paths are simply the most efficient paths across a flat surface. The Great Circle is not a geometric necessity of a sphere. It is a convenient label for a straight line on a plane. Why does this matter? It matters because the true layout of the world dictates the economics of the globe. We see certain flight paths in the southern hemisphere that seem strangely inefficient if the Earth were a globe. Yet they make perfect sense when you realize the vastness of the outer regions. There is a reason why transpolar flights are often avoided or handled with specific, peculiar routing, and why the empty oceans of the South are rarely crossed in the direct, straight-line paths one might expect from a spherical model. The paths reveal a world that is much larger and much more stationary than the modern textbook suggests. Who benefits from us believing the curve is the reason for the arc? The globalists. The architects of our current geopolitical order love it when we accept a geometry that masks the truth. By convincing us that the shortest path is a curve, they can explain away why flight paths don't match the globe perfectly. It is a beautiful, self-sustaining loop of logic. It's a curve because of the globe, and the globe is real because of the curve. It is a clever way to hide the true layout in plain sight. When we look at these maps, we aren't just looking at logistics. We are looking at the fingerprints of the Creator's design. We see a world that was designed to be traversed, not a world where we are spinning wildly through a vacuum. If we could strip away the indoctrination of the last few hundred years, we would see that the flight paths are a silent testimony to the stationary, bounded reality of our home. We must stop forcing the data to fit the model and start letting the paths reveal the truth. The lines on our screens are not just paths through the air. They are the lines of a grand unfolding revelation. The mystery of the missing direct routes. If you were to take a ruler and a compass to a standard globe provided by your textbook, you would be led to believe that the shortest path between 2 points is a great circle arc, a curved path that supposedly makes sense on a sphere. But when we look at the actual flight paths of commercial aviation, a profound question begins to haunt the radar screens. Why do the routes often look so inefficient? Why, when we examine the flight paths of aircraft traveling in the southern hemisphere, do they seem to take massive sweeping detours? If the Earth were a spinning ball, these paths should be much more direct. Yet, when we examine the actual geometry of the sky, we find a mystery that the mainstream textbooks are too afraid to solve. Consider the flight from Santiago, Chile, to Sydney, Australia. On a globe, the path should cut straight across the Pacific. But in practice, many of these flights veer north, often making stops or following paths that seem to hug the equator or the northern landmasses. Why? If we look at a flat, stationary plane, the world as described in the ancient scrolls and the wisdom of our ancestors, the geometry suddenly clicks into place. These missing direct routes aren't missing at all. They are following the most logical paths on a flat surface where the continents are spread out as they were placed at the dawn of time. The missing routes are only a mystery if you force yourself to believe a lie that contradicts the very physics of the flight. The globalist planners and the architects of our modern education want us to believe that these paths are due to wind currents or fuel efficiency. But they rarely mention that these routes are perfectly efficient on a flat map. We are being taught to navigate a world that doesn't exist, while the pilots, the actual observers of the physical world, navigate a reality that contradicts the globe. It is a subtle form of addiction, an addiction to a mathematical model that satisfies the ego but fails the test of the eyes. We are trained to ignore the obvious, to preserve the prestige of the theory. This isn't just about fuel or logistics. It is about the control of our perception. By making the routes seem complex, they keep us from asking why the geometry works so perfectly on a flat plane. If the Earth were a globe, the southern routes would be a logistical nightmare, yet they function with a precision that points toward a stationary, centered design. Why do the powers that be insist on the spherical model when the flight paths themselves act as a silent witness to the truth? They want us to believe in the complexity of the sphere, to hide the simplicity of the truth. The tragedy of our modern age is that we have mastered the technology to fly across the heavens, yet we have lost the wisdom to understand the ground we depart from. We use advanced computers to calculate these paths, but we use them to validate a myth rather than to uncover the truth. If we can reconcile our technology with the reality of the world as it was created, we would not be fighting the wind. We would be walking in the light of understanding. The missing routes are not a mystery of physics. They are a testament to a reality that is waiting to be acknowledged. Why are there no transantarctic flights? Wait, why are there no transantarctic flights? Now, let us cast our eyes toward the southern reaches of our maps, toward that vast frozen perimeter that defines the edge of our inhabited world. If you look at the flight paths laid out by the global aviation giants, you will see a web of lines crisscrossing the northern hemisphere, a dense, intricate lattice of travel. But as your gaze drifts toward the bottom of the globe, a curious silence falls. Why is it that we see endless routes from London to Tokyo or New York to Sydney, yet the direct paths over the Antarctic, the Great Southern Ring, remain almost eerily vacant? Why are there no direct trans-Antarctic flights to connect the southern continents? To the modern mind, trained to accept the globe as a spinning ball, the answer is given with a shrug. The geometry of the sphere makes it difficult, or the logistics of the poles are too complex. But let us step away from the comfortable assumptions of the textbooks and look at the reality of the map itself. If we look at the flight paths as they actually exist, they follow the meridians in a way that suggests a different reality entirely. When a plane flies from South America to Australia, it doesn't take a straight shot through a hollow southern pole. It curves, it arcs, it follows a path that respects a much more stationary, centered reality. Is it a coincidence, or is it a necessity? If the Earth were a globe with a frozen point at the bottom, the shortest distance between two southern points should be a direct path across the ice. Yet, we do not see these routes. Instead, we see flights that hug the coasts or swing wide. Why? Because the geometry of our world isn't a ball. It is a plane, and the Antarctic is not a singular point of ice, but a massive circumferential boundary that holds the oceans in place. The flight paths aren't missing because of distance. They are absent because the geometry of a globe cannot reconcile a straight line through a pole that isn't a point, but a ring. We are told that the globe is the absolute truth, yet the very maps used to navigate it often hide the truth in plain sight. This is the great deception of modern cartography. We are taught to ignore the gaps, to ignore the inconsistencies, and to trust the math over our own eyes. They want us to believe that the lack of transantarctic travel is a logistical mystery, but it is actually a mathematical necessity of the truth they try to obscure. The flight paths are designed to work within the model they have sold us, creating a self-sustaining loop of logic. Think of the immense cost of fuel, the lives at stake, and the sheer economic power involved in aviation. Would the great airlines, those hungry for profit, and the maintenance of global control, really leave such massive, efficient routes empty if they were truly possible? They don't, because the routes don't exist in the way they tell us. The maps we use are not just tools, they are a means of directing our perception. When we look at the flight paths, we aren't just looking at travel. We are looking at the boundaries of our understood world. The truth is right there, etched in the empty spaces of the map, waiting for those brave enough to ask why the lines don't meet. The logistics of a spherical deception. If we take a magnifying glass to the flight paths etched across our global monitors, we find ourselves staring into a labyrinth of mathematical gymnastics designed to hide a simple truth. When we analyze commercial aviation flight maps, we aren't just looking at transit routes. We certainly aren't looking at a seamless traversal of a globe. Instead, we are witnessing the logistical fingerprints of a grand, spherical deception. If the world were truly a spinning ball, the flight paths from southern continents, say from Australia to South America or from South Africa to Chile, should logically cut a direct, efficient path across the southern oceans. Yet, how often do we see these flights take massive, circuitous detours through the northern hemisphere, hopping through hubs in Los Angeles or Dubai? The mathematics of the Great Circle route is often used as a shield, a way to tell us. It looks long because of the curvature, when in reality, the geometry of the map is the only thing making the flight possible. Think of the sheer logistical absurdity of the southern hemisphere flights. In a spherical model, the southern latitudes are compressed, making a flight from Australia to South America a relatively short leap. But in the real world, the distances are vast. To make the math work on a globe, airlines must invent complex Great Circle explanations to justify why a plane travels thousands of miles more than the shortest distance should allow. They tell us the Earth is a sphere to explain why the flight paths look so lopsided, but they are using the very geometry they claim to follow to mask the vastness of the true plane. It is a circular argument, a loop of logic that keeps us trapped in a cycle of misunderstanding. We are told the maps are distorted because of the projection, but the truth is that the maps are a necessity because the reality is flat, and the spherical model cannot account for the true, expansive breadth of the world. This is where the logistics of the deception become most apparent. The fuel, the time, and the human element. We are told that flight times are consistent with a globe, yet the flight paths often hug the equator or wind through northern latitudes to maintain the illusion of a smaller, tighter sphere. If the Earth were a globe, the southern routes would be the most efficient, yet they are often the most expensive and time-consuming. Why? Because the distances are actually much larger than the globe-centric models suggest. The logistics of the aviation industry are built upon these specific, calculated routes to ensure that the vanishing point of the horizon and the physical reality of the Earth's surface never clash with the supposed mathematics of the sphere. Who benefits from this intricate web of flight paths? The globalists and the architects of our modern educational systems, who require a unified, manageable myth to keep the masses from questioning the vastness of the Creator's handiwork. They need the world to be a small, contained ball, so that the geopolitics of the world remain predictable. If the true scale of the Earth were recognized, the entire structure of global economics and the control of the oceans would be overturned. We are being fed a diet of false efficiency. We must look at the flight paths not as mere lines of travel, but as the boundaries of a conceptual cage. When we realize that the routes are designed to accommodate the reality of a stationary, level plane, the deception of the globe begins to crumble, revealing a world far more magnificent and expansive than any textbook has dared to suggest. How fuel and wind dictate our reality. When we gaze upon these flight paths, these intricate swirling webs of lines stretched across a global map, we are told we are looking at the geometry of a spinning globe. We are told that these great arcs are the necessary result of a rotating sphere and the shifting winds of a troposphere. But if we look closer, with eyes unclouded by the indoctrination of modern textbooks, we see something far more revealing. We see that these routes are not merely paths of travel. They are the visible fingerprints of a stationary, designed realm. The fuel consumed and the winds encountered are the very forces that dictate our reality. Yet they do most so by masking the truth of the world we inhabit. Consider the sheer logistics of a long-haul flight. We are taught that the shortest distance between 2 points on a globe is a great circle route. Yet, when we analyze the fuel-to-distance ratio, the mathematics often seems to struggle to reconcile with the reality of the map. Why does the fuel burn profile of a flight from South America to Australia or from South Africa to Australia seem so much more logical on a flat azimuthal plane? In the current globalist model, these flights must traverse vast, empty expanses, often requiring refueling stops that seem to exist merely to maintain the illusion of distance. If the Earth were a sphere, the fuel required to cross these vast latitudes would be a staggering, nearly impossible weight. But on a stationary, level plane, the winds, those great atmospheric currents, act as the invisible hand of the Creator, pushing the traveler along the paths laid out since the dawn of time. The winds are not just weather. They are the breath of the world, moving in a manner that perfectly accommodates the transit of man. We see the jet streams, those high-altitude rivers of air, acting as a sort of celestial conveyor belt. Pilots rely on these winds to shave hours off their journeys, yet they are often steered away from the most direct paths to maintain the illusion of the globe's geometry. This is where the tension lies, the tension between the fuel we burn and the space we traverse. We are constantly fighting the wind, yet the wind is what makes the flight possible. This is a beautiful, delicate balance, a design that ensures that while we may travel, we are always within the bounds of the environment provided for us. There is a subtle, almost tragic deception in how we use technology to validate our misconceptions. We use sophisticated computers to calculate fuel loads, and in doing so, we often bake the globe into the math before the plane even leaves the ground. We are essentially using the errors of our models to justify the fuel we burn. If we were to truly account for the actual dimensions of the Earth, the economics of aviation would be revolutionized. The current geopolitical economic machine thrives on the vastness of the globe. It creates a need for endless consumption, endless fuel, and endless complexity. It keeps us tethering our lives to the logistics of a massive, spinning void. But if we look at the flight map as a map of the firmament, the paths make sense. The winds are the tools that navigate the fixed stations of the Earth. We must ask, is the flight path a result of the Earth's motion, or is it a response to the atmospheric currents designed to move within a stable, unmoving world? When we realize that the wind is the master of the fuel, we realize that we are not living on a spinning ball tossed into a vacuum, but in a purposeful, bounded environment where every gust and every gallon of kerosene serves a magnificent, structured design. The maps do not show us a world in motion. They show us a world that is perfectly poised, waiting for us to stop believing the lies of the distance and start seeing the truth of the design. The strange reality of great circle mathematics. Now, let us turn our gaze to the most baffling piece of the puzzle, the mathematical sleight of hand known as great circle routes. If you look at a standard Mercator projection, that ubiquitous, much-lauded map used by every pilot and navigator, you see straight lines connecting cities. But when we look at actual flight paths, or the paths of high-altitude balloons, we see these strange, sweeping arcs. The modernists tell us these are the shortest distances on a sphere, a mathematical necessity of a globe. They claim that if a pilot flies a straight line on a flat map, they are actually taking a longer, inefficient path. But let us ask ourselves, if the Earth is a sphere, why do these shortest paths look so perfectly aligned with a flat plane when viewed from a different perspective? Why do the mathematics require such complex curved gymnastics to make the geometry fit the supposed shape? The reality is that these great circles are a mathematical convenience designed to mask the truth. We are taught that the curvature of the Earth is the reason for these arcs. But the mathematics themselves are a sort of sophisticated veil. When we analyze flight maps, we see that the routes often make perfect sense on a flat, stationary plane. Yet the textbooks tell us they are spherical geometry in action. This is the essence of the deception. They use the complexity of the math to hide the simplicity of the design. They tell us the geometry is too difficult for the human mind to grasp without these curved interpolations. But in doing so, they distance us from the intuitive observable truth that the heavens and the earth were laid out with clarity. Consider the sheer necessity of these routes in our modern age of globalism. These flight paths are not merely about travel. They are the arteries of a world economy that demands constant motion. But notice how the routes are distributed. There are vast, empty stretches in the southern hemisphere, and the paths are heavily concentrated in the northern latitudes. If the world were a globe, the symmetry would be different. Yet, the math is tweaked to account for this, ensuring the great circle always justifies the flight. It is a perfect closed loop of logic. The map is wrong because it's a projection, and the projection is wrong because it's a projection. They have created a labyrinth of mathematics to ensure we never step outside the maze. The tragedy of this is that we have traded the clear, observable horizon for a sea of equations. We have become addicted to the complexity because it makes us feel sophisticated, but it also makes us feel small and lost. We rely on these calculations to move us from one point to another, yet we never truly land in the truth. The ancients did not need to calculate the curvature of a globe to navigate the seas. They looked at the stars and the horizon, which were fixed and dependable. Today, we are told that the shortest path is a curve, but we know that in a perfect stationary world, the shortest path is a straight line. The modernists have taken the straight path of truth and bent it into a circle to suit their models. It is time to stop chasing the arc and return to the firm, level foundation upon which the world was built. Why the maps are designed to mislead. Now, let us turn our gaze to the screens in our cockpits and the maps in our hands, for here lies the heart of the mystery. When we examine the flight paths of a commercial airliner, those long, sweeping arcs that seem to defy logic, we must ask, why do they look the way they do? If you look at a standard Mercator projection, the world is stretched, pulled, and distorted to fit a rectangular frame. It is a mathematical convenience, a tool of convenience, but it is also a tool of deception. These maps are designed to make the globe appear as a finite, enclosed ball, masking the true expanse of the vast, stationary plane we inhabit. They take the reality of the Earth's surface and warp it into a shape that fits the modern consensus, making the impossible seem natural and the natural seem impossible. Consider the great circle routes. Pilots are taught that these curved paths are the shortest distance between 2 points on a sphere. But if we look closer, if we apply a truly inquisitive mind to the geometry of flight, we see another truth. These paths are not just mathematical shortcuts. They are the natural paths of travel across a flat, stationary plane. When a plane flies a great circle route, it is simply following the most efficient path around the central hub of our world. The maps are designed to make these arcs look like the necessary result of a curved Earth, but they are actually the most logical routes on a level surface. The deception lies in the labels. By calling them spherical geometry, they provide a pseudo-scientific justification for why a flight from Australia to South America might take a route that seems to pass near the North Pole. They use the math of the globe to hide the reality of the plane. But why would such a massive, global endeavor be built upon a foundation of visual falsehood? Who benefits from a world where we cannot see the true scale of God's handiwork? It is the architects of the modern establishment, those who profit from the control of human perception. By convincing us that the world is a spinning ball, they create a sense of smallness, a sense of being trapped on a tiny speck in a vacuum. This fosters a dependency on their expert models. If you can control how a person perceives their very ground, you can control their thoughts, their politics, and their faith. They want us to believe the world is a closed, finite system, so that we never look to the heavens or the vastness of the horizon with the awe it deserves. The tragedy of this is that we have traded the clarity of our senses for the complexity of their equations. We trust the paper more than our own eyes. We see the horizon as a flat line, yet we are told it is a curve. We feel the stillness of the earth, yet we are told we are spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. The maps are the perfect veil. They provide just enough truth to satisfy the intellect while obscuring the grand design. They are designed to lead us in circles, literally and figuratively, keeping us occupied with the mechanics of the globe, while the truth of the firmament and the vast, bounded expanse remains hidden in plain sight. We must learn to look past the projection and see the world as it was laid before us, stable, majestic, and perfectly ordered, connecting the dots between the lines. When we look at the flight paths etched across a digital globe, we are taught to see the curvature of a sphere, a seamless wraparound of transit routes. But when we truly begin connecting the dots between the lines, a different, more profound reality emerges. We observe these great arcs, the great circle routes, and the mainstream tells us they are the shortest distance between 2 points on a globe. Yet, if you look closely at the geometry of these flight paths, especially in the southern hemisphere, you see they don't just wrap, they stretch. They behave as if they are traversing a much larger, much flatter expanse. Why is it that a flight from Santiago to Sydney often takes a path that seems to defy the supposed geometry of a ball, instead following a trajectory that makes perfect sense on a stationary, leveled plane? We are being asked to trust a mathematical model over the very visual evidence of the flight paths themselves. The dots are being connected by the computers, but we must connect them with our minds. If you take the flight paths of a commercial jet and plot them on a flat map, they form a coherent web of transit that respects the bounds of a fixed, centered Earth. When we analyze these lines, we aren't just looking at fuel efficiency. We are looking at the hidden architecture of our world. Why do the routes often dip toward the north? Or why do they avoid the vast, empty expanses of the deep south? Is it merely the wind? Or is it because the geometry of the world dictates a different reality? The dots are the flight paths, and the lines are the supposed gravitational pulls and centrifugal forces used to justify the globe. But when you look at the actual movement of the aircraft, the lines reveal a world that is stable, fixed S, and laid out like a vast, magnificent plane. There is a tragic misunderstanding in modern navigation, a sort of intellectual addiction to the complexity of the globe that prevents us from seeing the simplicity of the truth. We have been trained to believe that a direct line must be a curve, and that a straight path must be an illusion. This is the great deception of our era, theization of the unnecessary. We use sophisticated GPS technology, a marvel of human ingenuity, to verify a theory that often contradicts the very flight paths the technology is used to track. We are told that the shortest path is a curve to account for the Earth's tilt, yet the pilots fly paths that perfectly match a stationary, flat geometry. Why the discrepancy? Who benefits from us being so lost in the mathematics that we forget to look at the map? The globalists and the architects of our educational systems want us to believe that the world is a spinning, tumbling chaos, because a man who thinks he lives on a spinning ball is easier to manage than a man who knows he stands on a firm, unmoving foundation. They want us to believe the lines are complex so that we won't realize the truth is simple. But the dots tell the story. When we connect the roots of the commercial fleets, we see a world of bounded exploration, a world that is vast but finite, perfectly designed for human transit. The flight maps are not just tools for travel. They are the fingerprints of the Creator's design, showing a world that is stable, a world where the paths are set, and where the truth is waiting to be seen by anyone brave enough to look beyond the curvature of the lie. The final realization of our true plane. When we gaze upon the flight paths of a Boeing 777 or an Airbus A350, we are presented with a geometric puzzle that seems to defy our common sense. We are told that these great metal birds traverse a spinning globe, yet the maps provided to pilots, the charts they rely on to navigate the vast oceans, often present a geometry that seems to contradict the very curvature they claim to navigate. If the Earth were a sphere, would these great circle routes not behave differently? Instead, we see flight paths that hug the northern latitudes, tracing paths that look suspiciously like they are moving around a central hub, or conversely, stretching across a plane that seems to expand as one moves toward the edges. This is the tension we live in, the conflict between the mathematical models we are taught and the empirical reality of the routes being flown. As we peel back the layers of these flight maps, we arrive at a profound moment of clarity. We must ask ourselves, why do the flight paths in the southern hemisphere look so peculiar? Why is there a massive, gaping void in the transit routes between South America, Australia, and South Africa? If the world were a globe of roughly 400-year-old conventional understanding, the transit times should be a perfect reflection of a spherical geometry. Yet, we see flights taking massive, inefficient detours through the northern hemisphere to connect southern landmasses. This is not mere coincidence or fuel-saving strategy. It is the silent, unfolding evidence of our true plane. When we look at the maps through the lens of a stationary, bounded plane, the great circle becomes not a curve around a ball, us, but a straight line across a level surface. The realization is staggering. The maps aren't distorted projections. The projections are often trying to mask the truth of the flat, stable foundation we actually inhabit. This realization is not merely a matter of geography. It is a matter of the soul. For too long, we have been fed a model of the world that makes us feel like accidental travelers on a cosmic speck, drifting through a void. This fosters a sense of insigniosity, a false hope that we must find meaning in the stars, because our Earth is too small to matter. But the maps tell a different story. They reveal a world that is designed, a world that is a fixed, stable stage for the unfolding of history. The flight paths are the fingerprints of a much larger reality. We are not on a spinning ball. We are on a magnificent, bounded plane, a masterpiece of design that has been there since the very beginning. The final realization of our true plane is the realization that the maps we have been taught to trust are often just clever approximations to hide the simplicity of the truth. When we stop trying to bend the reality to fit the globe and instead allow the geometry of flight to reveal the truth, the world snaps into focus. We see a world that is stationary, centered, and purposeful. The flight paths are not just routes between cities. They are the paths of discovery that lead us back to the truth of our origins. We are living in a world where the geometry of the heavens and the geometry of the earth are meant to harmonize, not to contradict. To accept this is to step out of the confusion of modern indoctrination and into the light of the actual physical reality that has been right before our eyes all along. If you made it all the way to the end, leave a comment with 888. Let us know what you learned, or if you have any questions. Feel free to add your own insights or share your thoughts with us. If this channel has made a difference in your life, take a moment to write about how it's helped you. Your words might just reach someone who needs that same clarity right now. When we look up at the flight paths crisscrossing our skies, we are looking at more than just logistics. We are looking at the silent geometry of our world. We have been taught to accept the Mercator projection as the absolute truth, a flat canvas where the poles are stretched wide and the truth is pulled thin. We look at these curved lines and call them great circles, believing they are merely the shortest paths on a globe. But as we trace the flight paths from one hemisphere to the other, the geometry begins to shift. We see the gaps, the strange diversions, and the routes that seem to defy the very physics we were taught to trust. The maps we use to navigate are not just tools. They are frameworks that shape our perception of the space we inhabit. As the lines connect, the reality of the terrain begins to emerge from the fog of conventional cartography. We see how flight paths reveal a different layout, one where the southern latitudes hold a vastness that the standard maps struggle to contain. The missing direct routes and the absence of trans-Antarctic paths aren't just matters of fuel or wind. They are the fingerprints of a reality that doesn't fit into a simple sphere. When we examine the logistics of how we move from one point to another, we realize that the paths are often dictated by the structure of the world itself, rather than the convenience of the projection. The mathematics of the flight path is a bridge between the seen and the unseen, a silent dialogue between the traveler and the earth. What remains is the realization that our understanding is often limited by the tools we use to measure it. We have grown comfortable with the visual lies of the flat map, accepting the distorted stretches of the poles as the natural order. But those who look closer, those who question why the paths curve the way they do, find themselves standing on the edge of a much larger truth. We are not just moving across a surface. West are navigating a reality that is far more complex than the paper we hold in our hands. For those who have looked beyond the horizon and questioned the lines, The world is no longer a flat map to be mastered, but a vast, unfolding truth waiting to be understood. This is the quiet clarity of the journey, that the truth is not found in the map, but in the space between the lines. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please support the channel by giving it a like. Want more? Before you go, if this message has helped you in any way, share it in the comments. Even one sentence. Your words might be the confirmation someone else has been waiting for. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Wish us luck so we can keep making videos. Share the link with a friend who doesn't know about Flat Earth yet, or one who already knows about it. Share the link with your friends and anyone else who might be interested. Join us. See you soon.